What it do, everybody? It's your boy King Crowder checking back in with another historical fact that you don't know or that's not discussed. Today's lesson will be talking about the 1943 Detroit riots. Why do we want to talk about the Detroit riots? We always hear about the Watts riots and how black people stood up from when Rodney King was getting attacked by those race soldiers back in those times. But we never talk about incidents prior to that. So today's lesson will be about how Detroit had a similar situation going down. This situation took place in 1943 in Detroit, Michigan. Mind you, around this time, that's when the great migration of blacks from the southern part of the United States started to migrate to metropolitan cities due to urbanization. We were leaving farms and smaller town communities from the South due to Jim Crow and other racial things going on. And we were definitely moving up to chase these factory jobs, union jobs, higher paying jobs, better wages, and less racism that was very apparent and very much down in the South. So as a lot of these black people leaving the South moved up to the North, the number one thing they noticed that they can only live in certain parts of the land, in certain parts of areas. So it was literally almost 200,000 black residents that migrated to the area and were only allowed to live in 60 square blocks of Detroit Metro. Think about how insane that is for a second. Over 200,000 blacks were leaving the South to chase these factory jobs and they can only live in certain locations. So the turmoil began to spew a lot. Now, mind you, these are tax-paying citizens. They have families. They have an ideology about how they want to chase freedom and chase different parts of the world. They also believed in that they want to get that part of American dream. Now, mind you, these people were formerly enslaved people, Jim Crow, freedom riders, former war veterans that wanted just their piece of the American pie. So mind you, the Civil War probably happened, World War I, World War II. So all of these people were very demanding and they knew their rights. Hey, we represent this country. We fight for this country. It's about time we get our fair shot. So the political movement in Detroit began to spur and grow more because a lot of blacks were putting the people of power who they wanted inside of the Detroit metro area. So Detroit literally agreed to build more housing for the blacks in this area. And once they agreed on the east side to become more of the black side of Detroit, they also called it the Black Bottom. Around this time when the housing from the political structures were being built, you began to see the whites in the area push back by saying, we don't need more of them. They don't need to come and take more land. Why are you guys building from them? Literally, when they saw that these issues with the white people pushing back on them, the black people on this side of town decided to respond. How did they respond? They literally told people with threatenings by saying all the younger white youth in the area began to fight the black boys. So that's when the race battles began to spur first. First, the fights in the streets among the young boys began to brew up and go around. After that, blacks in the areas began to attack white businesses. They began to burn them down in the Paradise Valley area. They began to pull white people out their cars, beat them up, fighting them, and destroying them by saying, hey, look, man, we're up here, we're not playing. We want our freedom and we want our rights. Literally, they will overturn the city of Detroit by saying, either we gonna have a fair shot or ain't nobody living up here. So as Detroit small businesses of the blacks began to want their freedoms and seek it, over 6,000 federal troops had to come to the city of Detroit to get rest. These troops had to come down here to say, man, these blacks are really rebelling and they want their rights and their freedoms. They literally had those white people shook because the Detroiters in that area saying, if we can't get the same freedom and rights, can't nobody get it. Mind you, this was an impactful idea because Detroit, the Michigan area, has never seen anything like that. They have this influx of blacks coming from the South and to the North. They're moving in mass numbers. They're commanding factory jobs. Most of the skilled labor and craftsmen come from this area. So it was a bit of fear by saying, yo, we don't know how we're going to handle this. So at this time, the Detroit people were not playing games. The reason why this was so a predominant thing to talk about is history, man, because these black folks literally caused $2 to $3 million in damage in the Detroit area. They made all the white businesses know, if y'all don't want to give us what we want, we're going to take what we want. And the reason why this is such an important part of American history is that we always are being taught that most blacks in that time were just being docile. They got beat on. Nothing happened. But literally, we see multiple times in history that did not happen. That they had to forcibly take back what was old, and they fought for what they wanted to know. Now, there was a lot of deaths that occurred that weekend. Majority of them white people. White people were killed, shot at, beat up, pulled out their car, beaten down, and that's when the solution came about. I know we never hear that throughout the history, but I think the history should always be balanced and show the honest perspective. These parts of history are truly important because we need to know that it didn't just happen one way. It was not just in a master agreement, we all agreed to this. There were times where we did, but it also should be told from the perspective of other things that happened. And the story of Detroit is a perfect example. The results of this resulted to more black lands being built, and more political unity, and more understanding. Detroit still has its problems and issues, which we well documented and know to this day. But I believe the 1943 race riots in Detroit definitely show how the relative Detroiters have their own energy to them, how they stand up for themselves. Man, Detroit is a tough city. Hard-nosed, blue-collar, Ford, you know all the stuff that's in Detroit. That's what they were known for. And we must admit that black Americans gave us that culture up there because they believed in fighting the weather, the elements, fighting for their rights, tough nose, hard. You know all the things about Detroit we know about. And I think this important part of history should be taught, should be educated upon, because most people need to know it. I definitely think it's important. I definitely think it's a beautiful part of our American history to see the struggle and how the changes occur afterwards. And I all think it needs to be added to. Again, I'm chiming back out again, y'all. It's your boy King Crowder with another lesson of history that we should talk about. That's very important. I hope you like what I'm saying. I hope you want the information I'm saying to you to make more sense. And if there's anything else you want to add to it or learn about, please let me know. All of this is truly important and impactful, and I hope you learn something from it. Peace.